Today we meet Darren Burn, who shares his unique journey from a young budding ITN journalist to becoming the CEO and founder of Out of Office, a luxury travel company focused on the LGBTQ plus community. He discusses the pivotal moments of his career, including early experiences of journalism, the challenges of starting his own business, and the importance of having resilience and adaptability in the face of adversity. The discussion also touches on the challenges of sustainability in the travel industry and the growing demand for experiential travel that connects his clients with local cultures. Finally, he shares advice to his younger self. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Darren. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Oh, hi there. How you doing?
I'm good. So it's an interesting one because I love when we have guests that are working in the holiday industry and in the travel industry because we can all start dreaming of beautiful locations. And I'm sure I've got a few questions for you for your favourite spots later on when we get to it. But we always kick off the podcast by starting with a question which is for people to understand how you've got to this lofty position of CEO and founder of Out of Office and Gay Travel. Because I think it's really important that people realise career journeys are not linear. And certainly with your stories, where I'm loving it, it's where you start and where you finish are two rather different places. So do you want to give us that bit of background?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like most teenagers approaching that leaving school age, I had no clue what I wanted to do in my life. Literally no idea. And I walked into the careers office at school one day, and there were a bunch of potential work experience placements, and there was remarkably one at Sky News, and I was like, oh, well, that sounds more fun than the other ones. So I put my name down for that, and I'd done a bit of writing. I'd done a bit of writing for the school newspaper, that kind of stuff. But journalism wasn't kind of on my radar as I must do. And I've got a real kind of passion for journalism. And I vocational journalist kind of thing
Yeah.
wasn't there. Anyway, I went into this work experience placement. They threw me right in the deep end. 3 weeks, overnight shifts at Sky News. 17 years old. One morning they whacked me on telly because a teenager had gone missing with someone she'd met on the internet, and they wanted to get me on telly, speaking to strange men in Thailand to see if they'd lure me over there. And
You were
suddenly,
bait. You were bait, were
yeah,
you?
bait, yeah, I was baited, yeah. And they
That's not
essentially,
on your
yeah,
LinkedIn profile for some
no, I
reason.
know it's on YouTube somewhere. But they basically put me on air and asked me loads of questions about, the dangers of internet chat rooms. I think I used the term "little lover boy" at some point in it, which was quite embarrassing now, several years later. But yeah, that was kind of a catalyst for me to go, well, actually, this is quite fun. Like this is, and I was 17 years old and being on telly, and like that was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so did that work experience. Then left school, went traveling for 9 months down to Australia, and when I came back. I did a bit more work experience at Sky for a couple of months, and then started uni in London and thought, "Do you know what? Why don't I carry this on? Because there's nothing else I know that I want to do. I was doing a business and economics degree. I'd chosen that because I thought it's relatively generic, it's relatively interesting, but it's not kind of law or
Yeah.
medicine, something really
Yeah.
kind of specific. So I chose a generic degree deliberately because I thought, well, at that time, I want to get a degree, I want to party in London, and I don't know what I want to do in my life. So go and get a generic degree, which will stand you in good stead, and use that as a foundation. But I basically moved to London and then just sent an email speculatively to the editor of ITV News, Deborah Turness, who's now CEO of BBC News, actually. And she responded to my email and said, "Oh, I've got this documentary we need some help on. Do you want to come in?" So I went in, met them. They were like, great. So I started working on a documentary with Trevor McDonald. I was like, what, 19 years old? And then all the way through uni, I end up working on their news desk on a freelance basis, a couple of days a week, evening shifts, a couple of weekend shifts. And I kept that up all the way through uni until at the end of uni, I went for a full time job there for basically all of my 20s, and had money can't buy experiences, dine out for life experiences, like stories I can tell for you haven't got enough time on this podcast, Steve, for those some of those stories. But yeah, really, really fascinating few years of my life, and I think stood me in really good stead for just being a bit of a generalist, like having
Hmm.
to respond quickly to things. Like I would be interviewing the CEO of a FTSE 100 company, and I would know nothing about the company. I'd get thrust a piece of paper about their financial results and have to go and interview the CEO. And I was like, oh God, how do I do this? What do I do? But like that kind of thrown in the deep end, and somewhere like ITN where I was working at the time, you're definitely a big fish in a small pond. I think I probably would have got lost somewhere like the BBC, which is obviously a vast beast, but somewhere like ITN, it was a really good stomping ground for me to really get stuck in. Like, I'd interviewed two prime ministers by the age of like 24. I'd like covered court
Who was
cases. Right,
who was your favorite?
I'm not going to go there. Uh, going to go there. Nick Clegg was the most affable interviewee of when it was the coalition government. Nick Clegg was the most approachable interviewee out of all the party leaders at that point.
Really?
That's all I'll say about.
That's it. Yeah, we'll just say
Uh,
positive things. That's important. You're right.
yeah. I remember once actually interviewing David Cameron in the cabinet room in Downing Street, and I had like two. They always say you've got two questions, so I had asked my two questions. I really wasn't happy with his answers, and then I went for a third question. You see him in the video turn to walk away, but then I've got the press officer tapping me on the shoulder, being like, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." Yeah, so like this is all the stuff that happened in my 20s, and I was like, and like most people in your 20s, you're a bit kind of I don't know, slightly arrogant. I was slightly arrogant about it, I think, probably in my early 20s. Like, I've done this, I've done that. I'm like, I don't think you don't get full emotional intelligence till about 26, I think, right? Or something
Yeah,
like that. So, but looking back on it, that was just the best foundation for having a benchmark in life where if you can do that, you kind of go, well, if I could do that, then I can kind of do anything. I can do whatever I want to
yeah,
do, and I don't need to be
yeah,
scared about it. I don't need to be nervous about it. So I think it's really important to have a benchmark in life. My benchmark still to this day is interviewing my idol Janet Jackson, who when I was 24 years old, I managed to get an interview with her, and I still to this day use up. If I could do that, if I could walk into a room of someone and interview someone I've idolized since I was 12 years old, then I can do anything. And like having that
and
foundation is great.
they say you should never meet your heroes. Was it worth meeting?
Totally. I mean, totally. I mean, I'm very nervous. Again, another
Yeah,
interview on YouTube somewhere to dig out. But yeah, I was very nervous. But like, you know, like they say never meet your heroes. Absolutely meet your heroes if you can.
yeah,
Like, that it's just a great story to tell. And like I said, that foundation, that benchmark, something to kind of really relate to and use when I'm nervous, when I'm scared, when I'm not sure about something, when I'm making a decision that's quite big, whether it's a life decision or a business decision kind of bring it back to that quite a lot, which sounds like a kind
mm,
of really small
no,
moment, but actually, if you have that to bring it back to, you actually are much better placed to make decisions without regretting them.
yeah. It's a very interesting point. I'd written down earlier when you'd mentioned something, and you've just reiterated it again. This idea of if you don't ask, you won't get. And like you say, sometimes the innocence of youth, you've got a bit more about you where you'll just go, "What have I got to lose?" But that for me is throughout your whole life. Like it's a bit like when we do a lot of marketing, and so when we're trying to win clients, we sometimes I used to be like, "Oh, I didn't ring them. What if they say no?" But it's like, well, at least you know, and that is the worst case, and you can move on. But I think that does paralyze people sometimes from even
Mm.
daring asking, doesn't it?
It's interesting. I find, especially in Gen Z, and I think it's because they've grown up with social media and mobile phones. And I use this analogy with my team quite a lot. The difference between synchronous communication and asynchronous communication. So at ITN, I was on the phone all the time having to get an interview for like the next hour. I needed it right there
Yeah,
and then. So the only option I had was to pick up the phone and ring them and ask them. In this day and age, people seem to have forgotten that art completely. Like you will send an email and then you wait for an email back and then you wait for an email back. And that whole process could take hours, days, weeks. Whereas if you picked up the phone, it would have taken 30 seconds. And
yeah,
like Gen Z really don't like picking up the phone. It's
no,
interesting. You have to like encourage them to do it and give them the license. They would rather WhatsApp or text or whatever, but that doesn't work in the business world or in certain industries. You have to have that kind of slight naivety. And like you said, what's the worst that can happen? Oh,
yeah,
they say no. They put the phone down. Well, that's all. That's fine. You know that,
yeah,
right?
yeah. That's it. It's interesting, but yeah, it doesn't make it any easier. So
No.
look, we're still on the first question, and we haven't got to what you do now yet.
Yes. So yeah. So I guess in my 20s, I knew that journalism and telly, whilst fun, was never going to help me. buy a nice house or like have the things I wanted to have in life. And so I was kind of getting to like mid 20s, late 20s, thinking, what next? And again, it's always down to fate or perfect timing, right? But I saw a competition in British Airways magazine by two travel entrepreneurs who were looking for new travel ideas. And I was on a flight, can't remember where to. I used to travel a lot with work, and I just back of a packet submitted this idea, saying, "Well, I'm a gay man, and that industry and that niche is really poorly serviced when it comes to travel, and especially
Mm.
luxury travel." And so I submitted this back of a fag packet idea to this competition in British Airways magazine, and out of several thousand entries, ended up going through a shortlist process, a bit like Dragon's Den, and winning some very, very, very small. I think it was like £30,000 seed investment in the business. I say very small. Obviously, £30,000 is a significant amount of money,
Yeah,
but when you're building a business the scale it needs to get to, and we've had no further investment since then. It's that's what we started our business on, basically a very little seed investment, and I ended up winning this competition. Going, oh, now what? And then going, well, I'm gonna have to quit my job and go and risk it all and try and start this business. And again, I think I come back to something my dad always said to me, which is if it was the right decision at the time, there's no point regretting it because it was the right decision at the time. And at that
yeah,
very moment in time, it was completely the right decision. And I always had in the back of my mind, if it doesn't work out, I'll just go back into telly. I'll just go back into journalism. I've got
yeah,
that as a foundation, or I'll do something
yeah,
else, or PR, or whatever. But if I hadn't had that, well, what's the worst that can happen? Kind of slightly gung ho attitude, then I wouldn't have made that jump. And so, yeah, I made the jump, and it took about a year to kind of really formalize the idea of what is now out of office.com, which is essentially a luxury tailor-made travel company, but with a real focus on the LGBT plus
yeah,
community, making sure that we ensure that people can travel safely wherever they're going in the world, even to countries where it is illegal to be gay. And that's kind of really, grown over the last 7, 8 years into something I'm really proud of now. We've got a team of about 20 in the business, and we're in a really good place. And I think, again, had I not made a couple of those little snap decisions along the
yeah.
way, then it wouldn't be where we are now, really.
I love that. I think it is, and it's right. And so the BA competition was the impetus, but had you had this ticking in the back of your mind, you think earlier, because you weren't be able to find travel options for yourself that you were comfortable
Well,
with?
yes. I mean, I was not a luxury traveller at that point. I was in my
Yeah,
mid to late 20s, right? I am now, thankfully.
yeah.
And
You've made
and
up for that now, yeah.
the idea of backpacking gives me and bed bugs gives me the heebie-jeebies now, but it wouldn't have then. But I actually went on a trip with my then boyfriend to Egypt, and we got turned away from a hotel.
Right.
And so that was just a trip I'd booked on a package holiday website, really. And that really was kind of, I guess, the inspiration and the kind of nugget, the seed
Yeah.
idea that developed further. But actually, I hadn't really got any further when I submitted the idea to the British Airways magazine competition. I hadn't really got any other idea or any further than gay travel. It's got to be something
Yeah.
about that.
That'll
That's
be
got to
fine.
do.
That'll do.
Got to be better. And so it took a little while to evolve it. And my business partner, Ross Marshall, who is founder of a company called Your Golf Travel, who's the one who initially invested in our business, and he also helped found spabreaks.com.
Yeah.
They are the ones that really kind of helped focus my mind on the luxury market, because the package holiday, cheap and cheerful, bucket and spade market is all sewn up online, right? You just go
Yeah.
online, you book it, bish bash bosh, it's booked. Whereas the luxury tailor-made market, especially when you're thinking about honeymoons, private guides, excursions, nice dinners, all of that kind of stuff, you can't really just book that online very easily. And when you add the LGBT lens, as
Yeah.
a gay man, you've always got that niggle in your back of your head, like, is this property okay? Are the staff going to be welcoming? Is it actually safe? And there are so many destinations we send people to where it isn't safe on the streets or for the local people in that destination because of the laws, but people do want to go there and they do want to experience that culture. And so we partner with hotels that might have a gay manager or that really know and understand our clients so that they can provide that kind of discretion and level of service that our clients would expect. And we've carved out a really kind of good market now in the US. In fact, the US is predominantly our main market in terms of customers. About 80% of our business and turnover now comes from the US market. And I think it's for a number of reasons. The European market is quite developed and people are more used to kind of booking stuff themselves. But the American
Hmm.
market still very much likes that level of service, that discretion. And you need to look at what's happening in the US now with diversity and inclusion to understand that it's not actually that easy to necessarily navigate
Yeah,
the world internationally if you're an LGBT traveler.
that's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah, because you bought Gay Travel, didn't you, in
Travelgay.com.
2018?
Travelgay.com, yeah.
Travel Gay, sorry, yeah, Travel Gay. What year was that? 2018, I think, was it?
2018,
Or
yeah, and that was a website that was it's more of a it's a content business. It's the world's largest LGBTQ plus travel website, basically, with like destination content for almost every city on the planet. I think there's over 800 cities on the site now. And we update that very regularly. We take user feedback. We use on the ground resource to make sure we're really on top of what the best bars, clubs, restaurants, hotels, everything are. So if you're going to a destination, travelgay.com will basically tell you if you're gay or LGBTQ, these are the hotels to book, these are the bars to go to, these are the restaurants to eat in. It really is. It was a really great resource that started as Travel Gay Asia, then it
right.
became Travel Gay Asia and Travel Gay Europe, and then when we took it over, we expanded it out to the whole world essentially. So it's a great resource. It takes a lot of updating and moderation, a good
I was going to
content
say,
team behind it.
content-wise, look, I've looked at it obviously, and it's just like full of pages and pages of stuff.
Fast. It's fast, and it's you in that world of content, especially now with AI and Google, you are forever chasing your tail to make sure you're staying number one or number two in the Google rankings. Because as you probably know, Google are changing the algorithms almost monthly. It feels like now, and
Feels
to
like
stay
it,
on top
yeah.
of that is difficult.
No, it's tricky, isn't it? And in terms of so people can book through that site, is that tends to be a bit more of a self-service model rather than
Exactly. So yeah, people
out of
can
office
book
being the
tours,
bespoke?
excursions.
Yeah,
Exactly. So if you're booking just a hotel, then Travelgay is a great platform to do that in. It has a really kind of curated list of properties all around the world that we work with, that we've vetted, that we speak to, that actually engage with us. We have marketing agreements with most of them in terms of actually kind of having them have a marketing agreement with us to be on the site. They want to actually actively attract the LGBTQ plus community,
yeah,
and actually, people forget the LGBTQ plus community, the stats are incredible about it, right? They have 23% more disposable income and they go on holiday more times a year and they spend more in destination.
yeah,
So when you're looking at your as a
yeah.
hotel
In
or a
a
tourist
tough
board,
market, why not? Yeah,
yeah, you're looking if you're a hotel or a tourist board, it's a no-brainer. Your marketing dollar at the LGBT community will go further and return more on investment than it will just in the mainstream. So it's a really good segment to be in and to be advertising to. And I think that's where, I think what's happening in America is really sad at the moment because,
yeah.
there's not the
On
ability for
so
people,
many levels.
well, there's
But
not the
yeah,
ability for people to like actually say, well, actually, diversity and inclusion can be actually a profitable thing. And
yeah,
you'd think that Trump, as a businessman, would go, hold on,
would
there's a
see.
commercial argument here too, right? Not just a moral argument, there's a commercial argument too.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's much logic going on in his mind at the moment, Tyler. But again, we've promised not to get into that. Promised not to get into
Yeah, clear of
politics anywhere.
politics, yes.
Exactly, that just goes well. So you obviously, like you said, you started with this idea and go back to out of office, and you said the first year was a bit like you were forming it and evolving it. When did you think you'd got? So that was 2014 when you started it, wasn't it? When did you feel right? I've now got a shape of this business. I understand the proposition. I understand my market and what they actually want, which obviously may have evolved from what you wanted, which is always good. But there are other people out there, aren't there? So when do you think that hit
Yeah,
you that you were thinking,
it takes years. You're
yeah,
making it up. You're making it up a lot as you go along. Like you're never, and it's still even now. Like the market changes every month, and like you're
yeah,
only ever as good as your last sales month. And so, it's difficult. But I think probably I would say coming off the back of COVID, like that actually gave us an opportunity to reset the business. We'd had like what 2020, we had like 4 years of learnings by then,
yeah,
and 4 years of mistakes as well. Like every business, I'm a big believer you only really learn things from mistakes you make along the way, and So I guess off the back of COVID in 2021, it allowed us to reset the model for the business in terms of the kind of employees we wanted to hire, the kind of marketing we wanted to do, the kind of investment we wanted to make in the website, the kind of investment we wanted to make in brand. We'd never invested in those things
Yeah.
pre-COVID. And coming off the back of COVID and being a travel company that survived COVID, which I'm really proud of, like, there were
Yeah.
lots that didn't, that were our size. We weren't a big company then. There were lots of companies that went under. And to come off the back of that, I think that's when I really felt like, do you know what? Actually, we're really coming into our own now. We survived COVID. We've reset. We've got a good team in place, and I've got learnings of all the bad hires I made along the way, and all of the bad marketing we did along the way, and like all of that stuff. And suddenly you're like, actually, I feel like we're coming into our own. But I think anyone starting a business, if they say that they've nailed it in the first few
Yeah.
years, is lying, I would say.
You know, because like you say, because as a business grows, it presents so many different challenges, doesn't it? Like at first, there's you and a couple of guys that you know really well, and then you go wider and you recruit, and you get that wrong, and it just like, oh no, now I need HR, now I need this, and you.
Yeah, there's a lot.
So,
There's a lot of flab you can put into a business, and actually, I've seen other businesses that put flab in, and I think, I am an absolute jack of all trades, and that's the best asset I bring to the business. Is that I know a little bit about marketing. I know how to set up Google ads and how to set up Facebook ads. I know about website design. I know about HR and recruitment. I know a little about a lot, which is that's exactly what a CEO, in my opinion, should know. They shouldn't
yeah,
be a master of any one trade. They should know a little about a lot and then hire the people that can then help because they know a lot about a little.
yeah, and I think that's fascinating, isn't it? But to your point now, I do think it's good that you have that. I sometimes call it a thin veneer of knowledge across everything, because then you just know at least a starting point to know when you meet someone they are the right hire, because they can really deepen my expertise for the business here, here, and here. Which you're right. If you try and bodge and do it all, guess what? You'll just fall over, won't you? As well. That's the other thing.
But I think you can also call out when people are
Yeah,
trying to pull the wool over your eyes, right? Like that
yeah,
that that is it's not a nice thing to do, but you need to have that acumen to be able to do that. And actually, yes, like I said, it's dangerous to know a little about a lot, because actually you could be getting things wrong, but you should be able to, with the people who know a lot about a little, be able to have a really good conversation and dialogue that allows you, like you said, to deepen your knowledge. And actually, I
mhm,
want to be taught. I love learning. I want to learn more. I
yeah.
want to know how to do things more. And I think that curiosity, maybe it came from the journalism, but that kind of natural curiosity and inquisitiveness has really, I think, stood me in good stead.
Yeah, I think you are. I think naturally a lot of the guests I've been lucky enough to meet on the podcast, they've got that inquisitive nature about them. They've got that asking why a lot, and they all talk about a good days when they've learnt something new, even though they've been in the business for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, even some of them. Because I think when we're learning, we're evolving and developing as humans, aren't we? Which is where it's really, really interesting.
But also, you'd
Um,
be bored if you weren't. If I, if
yeah,
I if I wasn't learning new things or having new ideas, and I'm a bit of an idea factory, and I know my team would hate that about me. But like I just come up with ideas, and most of them are crap, by the way. But
yeah,
like you come up with the idea, and then you develop it, and actually the one your team will hold on to the good ones. And they'll be like, that's a really good idea. Let's develop that further. Let's think about that. And you need to be that person too, because otherwise, if you're not learning and you're not coming up with new ideas all the time about how to develop, you're standing still. And frankly, many businesses have gone under because people have stood still, right?
yeah. I think it's good as well as if you're at the heart of it and you are creating a sort of environment where questions can be asked. It will bring the team forward too, and they will then start to ask their own questions. And like you say, you'll gradually push everything up and improve the offer.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is about humility, and I've certainly kind of learned a lot of humility over the last few years of business in terms of like making sure you're empowering and asking your team questions. Like we've made so many, not so many, but enough bad hires in the time I've been with the business that now it's pretty clear on gut instinct whether someone's going to work out within the first
Yeah,
few weeks of a business, right? And you ask your team as well, like, do you think this person's a cultural fit? Do you think they're going to work out? What do you think? Do you think they've got what it takes? And your team will tell you pretty
yeah.
quickly.
They'll probably be even more honest, won't they? Yeah. And it is. And part of it, though, you have to make sure you don't create an echo chamber where everybody's the same, because you do need challenge in whatever to whatever level all the way through. So talk to me then about you've now built the business post COVID. How does the team look now? What sort of structure have you got underneath you?
Yeah, so I've got a commercial manager and a sales manager and product manager below me. So they essentially run the business on a day-to-day basis in terms of the ops side of things, in out of office, and in terms of running and driving the content team in Travel Gay. We've got a really good, strong sales team. Like for the first time, I feel like actually we've nailed the sales team now, but it takes a long time to even get your sales team right. And you make, like I said, a lot of bad hires along the way, and you invest in people, and then you hold on to them too long. And like actually now, I feel really confident and pleased in the sales team we've got. And for us, the most important thing, if you look at out of offices Trustpilot reviews and things like that, the thing that stands out most is the rapport that the customers and clients have with our sales team, with our
Yeah,
with our with our agents. Like and I think this is what sets us apart. But we have the time to deep dive into our clients. We spend ages on the phone with them, learn about their personalities. We allow the clients to have really open conversations. Like our inquiry form on the website asks people's sexual orientation. They don't have to fill it in. I think we're probably the only travel company that does that. But what it means is when someone fills it in, and most people do fill it in, that when we pick up the phone to that client, we're already like got really good information about them. Can open up, oh, where did you meet your husband, or how long have you been
yeah,
with your
yeah,
partner?
yeah.
Conversations that other travel companies
You
just
don't have
won't
to
have, or
fumble around and,
no,
get it
not
wrong.
that.
Yeah,
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 we've
yeah,
we've mystery shopped enough travel companies to myself included to go, oh, what does your girlfriend do, or like that, like that. Or I remember one travel company, a major high street travel company that we mystery shopped. We rang them up and we pretended we got to go to the Maldives on honeymoon, and we said, oh, so is it legal to be gay in the Maldives? And the person on the other end of the phone legitimately said, well, it must be because we send gay people there all the time. And like, instantly they've lost all credibility.
yeah,
Whereas our team will go, actually, do you know it's illegal to be gay in the Maldives? But we know the properties that it's safe to go to, that, like this is what you should do when you go through the airport. Don't hold hands at immigration. Like, when you get on your seaplane and get to your island, then you're absolutely fine. But we will choose the right islands, don't go to
yeah.
the mainland. Like all of that information, customers and clients really appreciate honesty. And so many people want to sell this absolute pipe dream. And I understand it because it's a holiday, it's a vacation. You want it to be amazing and pipe dream, but actually you also need to not lose credibility over being honest with people. And I think so many travel companies and agents that work within travel companies don't have the knowledge and experience and expertise to be able to deal with that segment particularly well.
I think it is like that you just explained there with one country, the nuances that unfortunately people, it's not right, but people have to go through, and are most of your clients accepting that there will be a slight bit of compromise from time to time when traveling in certain places if they choose to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, if you are an LGBTQ plus individual, you've dealt with that your entire life.
Yeah, yeah,
You're still in your own home. Me and my partner, when we walk down the street in London holding hands, we'd still kind of like have your wits about you. Like you do
yeah.
that in your hometown, let alone like, going abroad. So yeah, I think as an LGBT individual, you are already heightened to that and aware of that. So I think, yes,
Right.
there's definitely the ability to compromise there. But we've picked up plenty of straight clients along the way too without even trying. And they there's a few reasons that straight people book with us, which we love. I'd say about 25% of our clients are straight. And the reason they book with us is either they've had word of mouth referral from one of their gay friends who said, you've got to use this travel company. They're
Yeah.
excellent at what they do. And then, they realize that we are excellent at what we do. Or they think the gays know where to go. Let's follow the gays, basically. The gays are ahead of the curve. So that's the other reason that the
We're going to
LGBT.
have a good time. There you go with the
Yeah,
stereotype, but why
exactly,
not?
exactly.
Yeah, I
So
love
that's
that.
been great. That's been great to see, and we're looking at how we develop that market even further and better than some of the offerings that are out there already. So yeah, that's the kind of next plan for us.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that your model is that you say most people are talking to your agents, let's call them, to get the insight. So how do you train up the agents? Is it all theory, or do you try and get them out to
No,
the destinations?
bit of both really. So every single agent goes on at least 2 trips a year with us to different destinations. So that can be as far flung as French Polynesia or the Maldives or Australia. Like we've sent people to all of those places. It's far more valuable to send them to those more difficult destinations in terms of the insight there. But a lot of people who join our business have come from either a travel background or have done a lot of traveling themselves.
Right.
Not all of our team are LGBTQ plus, but a lot are. So obviously there's a lot of inherent knowledge in there about the
Yeah.
nuances. And then obviously, like I said, we partner with hotels that like proactively want to reach our community. So therein, we're almost naturally self-selecting in the properties we will work with because they're proactively wanting to work with our community, and that I think is massively helpful because you know that you're 7/10 of the way there already when choosing and handpicking these properties. And obviously, we've got our preferred properties now that we've sent thousands of people to,
Yeah.
and they
You
we
just
know
know
that
work. Yeah.
we just know. And we've got
Yeah.
it's a little black book basically, and long may that little black book be kept very secret to our business because that is the magic sauce there, really, making sure we know where people are safe and will be welcomed and get the extra honeymoon benefits or whatever it is that they're wanting, making sure that we can offer that because of our kind of network and our long-standing reputation within the industry for that niche.
That's fabulous. You basically do, because obviously leisure time is so important. It seems more important than ever, and you're de-risking it, aren't you? You're just saying, "Don't worry,
Yeah,
we've made those mistakes, so you don't have to." Nearly, isn't it? We've been there and
exactly.
had the
Look, and
pain.
our clients are our best feedback loop too. Like
Yeah,
every single client we have, we call them when they come back. Like, and we want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. We really do ask that. We say, like, just tell us what was amazing. Tell us what could have been done better. Tell us what wasn't quite right. Where did we miss the mark? And we own that too. Like we do sometimes, as any company will miss the mark on things. And I think, if you can own that stuff, and so many companies shy away from it. They're like, oh, just keep the customer thinking of positive, positive, positive. Actually, if you own it, the customer really appreciates that. And then we say, we want to do it better next time. Like come back to us next time. We promise we'll do it better, and they really appreciate that. Again, it's that different client relationship about honesty and trust that I think a lot of companies don't necessarily have with their clients. And I can't sit here and say every single customer has something go wrong because they don't. Most customers have things go right, but the ones that do have, like, a driver didn't turn up quite at the right time, or that driver wasn't quite right for them. Like we learn from that. You have to learn from it. You can't sit there and say that every single country, every single destination, every single person that picks you up at a car in an airport is, going to be the
yeah.
best fit for you. You have to learn from it. But we've done a pretty good job in a very short space of time building that black book up to something that any other company would admire, I think, for our community.
Brilliant. And so, obviously, let's talk a bit about you then. You, like you say, you've done all of the jobs in the business. How is as you've got this team that you're now trusting, and the business grows and grows and grows, you've obviously got to alter how you operate. So, how's your leadership style now that you've got this incredible business underneath you?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, I've just had a child, so that's going to change things a lot. My first child, and so that as anyone who's got children will know, that will focus your mind in terms of where you can spend your time and how much energy can go into certain things. I think a bit of a Duracell bunny previously, but the lack of sleep certainly wears down your Duracell batteries slightly. So, but I think it's a really good question. I think I spent a month this year out of the country, and my team had their best ever sales month. And to me, that was like a dream
So
come
you
true,
stay in
really.
there now. You're staying, yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that I didn't have to be in the office, no pun intended, out of office. I'm living up to the company name,
Yeah,
but I
you're
think
such a
that.
brand guy, aren't you? You're such a brand guy.
But for me, that really gave me the confidence that actually, and as any entrepreneur will know, you never have a day off. You check your emails
Mm,
every single day, but it's about being more efficient in how you do that. Like I don't need to be switched on 24/7 like I was in the early days. Like if something really is going wrong, I'm going to hear about it pretty quickly. Or if
yeah,
something needs my attention, I'm going to hear about it pretty quickly. And I think, in this day and age, and I think we all perfected it during COVID of like working remotely and being thrust into that and having to learn how to communicate in this form rather than in kind of in person. Um, I think that has really helped most entrepreneurs, I'd say, have a bit more flexibility in time. At least I'd like to think it does. And our team have flexibility in their working hours and their working locations and things like that. And I think it's really valuable. But in terms of my leadership style, I'm a pretty approachable person. I have everyone, like every CEO, I've got a bark if I need to, and I've got a kind of soft side if I need to, and I've got the pastoral side if I need to. But I think just being human is kind of the best thing I could probably attribute to that. Like, you know, that so many people aren't, so many, I remember being working at ITN and having a boss there that I was terrified of. And that really stood it. Like, there's only two people in my life that I've ever felt kind of like that feeling with that, like slightly chest tight and
Yeah.
stomach churning feeling. And it's such a horrible feeling. And you
Yeah.
know it instantly if you've got those people in your life that actually you don't want to be that person. And that stands you in really good stead
There's
to
another
not be
lesson
that
when it
person.
goes wrong, isn't it? That's you realize I'm not going to be that person. Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like every look, as any boss or CEO or entrepreneur, again, you make mistakes along the way. You pitch things slightly wrong. You upset people by accident without realizing it because you're dealing with humans at the end of the day. And actually, you know, humans are unpredictable. They're inherently unpredictable. There are three words that I use to govern every situation in life, and those three words are people are weird because they are, and that's wonderful, right? People are weird. But what I love about that is that you can't sit there and go, if I do this, then this will happen when you're
Yeah.
dealing with a
It's not
human. It
linear,
doesn't
is
work
it?
like that.
No.
No, it doesn't work like that.
I think it's a really interesting point. That idea of I get wound up by The Apprentice now because that is so not what business is.
Well,
And
I
this
think I stopped watching after series two. I think of that.
exactly, and you watch that, and it was interesting. We've had very lucky. We had Sarah Davies from Dragon's Den on,
Hmm.
and she talked a lot about this and saying when she went for her screen test at the BBC, they'd asked her to be more dragony, was the word they used. And she said that they'd rung her the day before. She went down to London for a screen test. And she said she didn't sleep and she was on the train just stressing about it because she was like, that's not me. Because she built a very successful business before it's on there. And she said, so she literally rocked up at the BBC and went, by the way, I'm going to be me. I'm going to be Sarah Davies, who is a northern woman who talks like this, but is nice. And I want to bring the best out of people. And if that works for you, we're going to be fab. If it's not, I'm off now. And they literally they went through the screen test and went, yeah, that's what we want. And she, to me, is much more a representation of how business has to be done now rather than the Alan Sugar with his big pointing finger. Because it's just,
It
nobody
doesn't work, and
works. Like,
you can't hire people if you're like that anymore.
no,
You just can't. Like that is the and but that's it. It's the old method, but it is not that old. It's about 10 years old. Like it's
yeah,
not it's not completely out of date. I've worked in I worked in a newsroom. A newsroom's a fierce place to work
oh
in,
yeah,
right? With
yeah,
big personalities, with big pressures and big deadlines, with people barking, like I said, and you learn pretty quickly how to stop people barking at you, and that's by doing a really good job and doing it
yeah,
well and doing it
yeah,
quickly, right? And being off the radar. You don't want to be on the radar for doing a bad job. And actually, I think it was it Barack Obama who said, and I really like the mantra behind it. Like if you do, and this is for everyone, but particularly for people going into the world of work, if you do a really good job, keep your head down, knuckle down, do a really good job, and do it well. Don't worry because you will get noticed. And
yeah,
the reason you'll get
yeah,
noticed is because people go, God, I don't have to worry about this person. They get on with it. They do it really well. I want to promote them. I want to look after them. I want to nurture them. I want to develop them. Whereas you've got the people who are, taking the piss a bit, or
yeah,
they're, not really putting in 100% effort. You spot them a mile off, and actually, you're like, well, why would I invest in you? Why would I
yeah,
develop you? And
yeah.
they're the people that come to you and ask for the pay rise and the promotion straight away. And you're like,
It's brilliant, isn't it?
you know, yeah. I really like that mantra of like, if you just do a job really well and you make the people around you not have to worry and not have problems, then you're going to get noticed naturally. And I think that's a great mantra for young people entering the world of work to just kind of live by.
It is so true. So, Darren, we've just done some research into the travel industry as a whole with some clients that are operating in the UK, operating in Europe, and then further afield. And it was really interesting getting their thoughts about what they saw the main issues. This was their view of 2025, which we're only a month in, so we can still talk about it. About the trends that came up for those guys were about obviously sustainability being something that they're dealing with positively and trying to make sure it works for the industry. And then the other one was experiential, and that their clients are wanting not just to go to a hotel and have a time. They want to make sure they can go locally, they can experience and make sure that some of their sort of tourism money is going into the actual local economy, not back into pockets back in the UK from the big multinational businesses. Is that something that you guys are seeing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a challenge inherently built into the travel industry around sustainability, right? Like the very nature of travel is normally not particularly sustainable in the sense of what people traditionally think of when it comes to sustainability. So, if you're getting on a plane and flying somewhere, that's clearly not as sustainable as jumping on a train and going somewhere on the train. I think the travel industry still hasn't quite figured that out, and I'm not sure there's an easy kind of you know
No.
nice solution to that, unfortunately. But I think certainly it's definitely something that clients and businesses are far more aware of and are trying to do more. I think what you've got here is, for example, out of office, with every customer we send away, we plant trees in their name. Now, whilst that may sound like a token thing to do, actually our clients really appreciate it because we actually are at least doing something rather than nothing. And I think there's got to be a line there, right? You've got to do something. You've got to be, like you said, helping the local environment or the environment as a whole, even if you're not able to fully make the entire trip sustainable. Now, there are travel companies out there that do really focus on, making sure it is more sustainable. So rail travel rather than plane travel and that
Hmm.
kind of stuff. But I think the very inherent nature, luxury, tailor-made travel and long-haul travel doesn't necessarily lend itself to that. But definitely clients ask about it, and definitely it's something we think about. So, when it comes to certain destinations, we give back. So it's not always necessarily environmentally. It might be in terms of the local community. So when people go to Sri Lanka with us, we sponsor a child's education there for 6 months as part of that trip through a partnership with a foundation. So there's things you can do that may not be completely sustainable from a environmental point of view, but are sustainable from terms of making sure that your tourism money isn't just going straight to some big conglomerate or some big multinational FTSE 100 or Nasdaq listed company. So I think that's what people are probably more aware of. Now, if someone, there are some B Corp travel companies out there, right, that do tickle those credentials. But you look at the B Corp process. I'm not slating B Corp as a whole, but you do find that like people are applying for B Corps for the sake of applying for B Corps rather than necessarily, I would say, going down the like completely ethical, sustainable route. And they're probably doing it from a here's a badge of honor and a PR perspective. And I'm not saying that everyone's doing that, but there's definitely some out there that are doing that to kind of, bolster their credentials, I would say, rather than actually trying to get to the root of the problem. And I don't have a solution sitting here now to say to you that we can become a fully sustainable travel company. I'd be lying if we did. But there's something quite nice about what we do as a brand and what we're going to do with future brands as well about trying not to disturb the environment when you go there, trying to be, more sympathetic with the environment. Like, do you really need to uh, go somewhere and dive right by all the really precious coral, for example? Like, do you need to do that? Do you could there's so many small things people could do too. Like if you're going to somewhere like the Maldives, do you need to be wearing sunscreen that damages aquamarine life and coral life? There are plenty of alternatives out there, right? So there are things that we can all do as individuals. Do you need to fly business class? Now, obviously, that's a contentious question for a lot of our clients. But do you are there other things you could do? Can you offset that? Can you carbon offset your footprint? It doesn't actually cost very much money in the grand scheme of a business class ticket to carbon offset your flight. Now, I'm not saying again. There's a lot of controversy over whether that is enough and whether that even works as a technique. But there are things people can do, and they can be little things, and I don't think it's just down to the travel company. I think it's partly down to the travel company. I think it's also down to the individuals and how they want to approach things. With the environment, we're all in this together, right? We've all got to do our part. When it comes to the kind of local side of things and the forgot the words you used actually.
Experiential, experiential.
Experiential side of things, yeah, exactly. The experiential side of things, yeah, absolutely. Like we especially in the LGBTQ plus community as well, people want to go and experience sometimes what it's like to be an LGBTQ plus individual in that destination. So what is the nightlife like? What is the culture like? What are the queer spaces like? Is there theatre there that's relevant? Is there, you go to the Vatican, for example, which you may sound what Vatican, but you go to the Vatican and you've got like Michelangelo. stuff in there that's pretty homoerotic in places, or there's like definitely like nuances of LGBT stuff within the Vatican. So like we have a guide that can take you around the Vatican and show you those things within the Vatican. So like that experiential stuff and really immersing yourself in those destinations, either from an LGBTQ plus perspective or just from a understanding how locals operate is really, really important. And there are so many. You go on to, I don't know, Viator or Get Your Guide, and some of those places where you can book tours and excursions, and pretty a lot of the product is pretty poor on that. Like you'll
Yeah.
turn up, you'll get a pretty ropey experience or a shared bus or a shared guide. Like we've again nailed the kind of like making sure we've got private guides in almost every country we send our clients to that really understand our community, can speak to that side of things, whether that's Oscar Wilde in London or whatever. Like there's loads of things we can do as our business that really gets people under the skin of a destination. I think long gone are the days, and don't get me wrong, I love a fly and flop as they're called, like going and sitting in a hotel and reading a book on a beach for a week. But there's got to be more to life to experiencing cultures and getting out there. And I think we're seeing it a lot with our American clients. They really want to get over to Europe and see some culture and like understand their heritage as well in a lot of cases in terms of where their
Hmm.
ancestry comes from or a bit about their background. We're certainly seeing a lot more of that. People want, a lot of Americans going to Ireland, for example, to really experience their heritage there, which I think is fascinating. I think it's a really interesting way to approach travel. Like you're companioning a holiday or a vacation with something a bit more nuanced and cultural.
Yeah, I think it is. It's interesting just listening to your answer there. The word's not really experiential. The word's authenticity, isn't it? And I think when you go to a destination, you want to see the real version of that destination, not something that, like you say, somebody in maybe London's decided what you go and see in Morocco because they've just read it up on the
Yeah.
internet, and
And
it's
like,
like,
like things like TripAdvisor have been great for the world, but been terrible for the world too, because like you go and Google, you Google best restaurants in Rome on TripAdvisor, and the top five are all just a bit average or like touristy.
hmm,
I have a rule when I go to places like Rome: I'll never eat anywhere that has photos of the food on the menu. Like, and it's actually really hard to find in places like Rome. Like most restaurants will have photos of the food on the menu because they're tourist traps, right?
yeah,
And it's really hard to find non-tourist traps in big cities like that, and that's where you know people can go on TripAdvisor. But guess what? You've gone on TripAdvisor and you think you found the non-tourist trap, but the irony is it's written by a load of tourists who've gone to the non-tourist trap, right? So therein lies the problem.
yeah,
Exactly. It's a vicious loop, but actually, that's where we partner with destination management companies around the world who can get you those private chefs and experiences and things like that you can't just go and book yourself on TripAdvisor
yeah.
very easily, at least.
No, I'd keep well away from TripAdvisor personally as well. Um, so look,
By the way, if anyone from TripAdvisor is listening and would like to buy travelgay.com, then obviously let's have a conversation.
yeah, yeah, because business is business at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
exactly.
We can throw those moths on the side. So, Dan, we're coming to the end of the recording, and it's always nice for a bit of reflection and just you've had your psychotherapeutic session so far, looking back. So, I wonder, I mean, you weren't that old then, but younger Darren than, sorry, you're not all that old now, but younger Darren than now when you're starting off your own business after winning that competition. Is there a piece of advice you'd give yourself or something that you wish you'd known then to start this business that would have helped the journey?
It's a really difficult question to answer, actually, because my one of my life mantras, I think I said it earlier, is about not having any regrets, right? So, like, if it happened for good reason, and you had to go through that, whatever it was, to get to where you are. But I guess if I were to look back now at my 20s, I think I touched on it earlier. It's about you don't actually know everything. You really don't know. You need to, you need to build a village around you of people that do, and it's good to know a little about a lot, but you don't necessarily, and you will never necessarily know everything that you want to know in order to kind of get this business off the ground. I think trusting your gut's really important too. I think I've not done that quite a lot of times. I think I've thought with my head quite a lot, and actually thinking with your head, like I said, humans are unpredictable. Logic doesn't always define the things that you do, and sometimes you just have to trust your gut and think, you know what, follow your gut instinct. That's probably better than your head sometimes. Not always, of course, but sometimes if your gut's really kind of saying something to you, then do it. And also, I think I probably would have told myself to not hang on to some colleagues and employees as long as I have, or for their good as well as mine. That's not a one-way street. That, like, I think, if something's not right, it's not working out. You can
Yeah.
continue trying to invest in someone or getting someone to be the square peg in the round hole, but a square peg's never going to fit a round hole, right? So, I think it's, unless it's Play-Doh, but
It's just,
I think it's those would be my kind of I guess initial musings on that question in terms of looking back. But yeah, no regrets, definitely no regrets. There's no point, because if it happened, it's done, it's in the past. The only direction of travel is forward. So it happened, just move on. But and also, if something is going wrong, then move on quickly. Don't linger on it. Don't dwell on it. Don't if I had dwelled on COVID and what I had to go through in that time, and in terms of the people I had to let go from the business, the furlough scheme, like if I dwelled on that, I do still think about it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not completely inhuman and completely emotionless. But if I dwell on that too much, it's actually quite a difficult time to look back on. So I think actually some of those things you just have to chalk up to experience and move on and move forward, because otherwise you could get, like you said, the psychotherapy side of things, you could get quite bogged down in it.
yeah, that's a brilliant answer. I love it because you're right. It is. It's all those things, isn't it? And a lot of it comes with just time served, doesn't it? To know that was really painful when I did it that way, so I'm not going to do it like that again. But yeah, there you go. But then you could argue, well, actually, you need to go through that to have this circumspect view now. So
Exactly.
we won't. We obviously not. We're good, but we can't reverse time yet. So we'll just not worry about
Don't
that.
do that podcast with Steve Henry, which all these answers will be on the internet for years to come, and you'll regret
Yeah.
them.
Well, by the sounds of it, you've got enough videos on YouTube already from your past, so you can't blame me. I'm not the first.
Exactly.
So final question then, Darren. It's like an interesting one. Has there been anybody that's had a big influence on, has you developed as both your career or as a leader and as you've grown the business?
Do you know what? Actually, the people that are the biggest influence on me, I think, are people completely not related to my industry or not necessarily even in business. It's actually the support network of non-business people, I think, that have helped me most. So friends, really important. Like, there's no one better than a friend to zone out of a conversation when you're chatting or wittering away about business, for you to go, do you know what? That's just not a good idea, or it's not important, or like, don't worry about it. I don't really read business books. I don't really listen to business podcasts, if I'm honest with you. Like, I think I won't name the podcast, but there's some major podcasts out there that are trading on some pretty ropey credentials of their own, I would say, in terms of like, the things that they've done, and they're hosts of podcasts that I don't think necessarily have the credentials to be running those podcasts quite a lot of the
Yeah.
time. I'm not looking at you, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm assuming I'm safe here.
Very big podcasts, and actually, when you see on social media people lapping up this stuff that some people
Yeah.
say, I'm like, that's not reality. That's not what business is actually like. It's not that glamour. People and people. What I don't understand about those kind of things is people think that the only way to build a business is to like get loads of investment and sell it for millions and millions and millions of pounds. Well, guess what? Most businesses in the British and international economy are actually small to medium sized businesses where
Yeah.
the founders and CEOs and the employees of that company are creating wealth for themselves and for the environment and for the economy and the wider society. That's what there's not enough of out there. That's what there's not enough
Yeah.
chat about. So don't get carried away by people talking all this big picture. Yes, okay, it's a nice pipe dream to have, right? I'd love to sell my businesses for mega millions of pounds one day, right? But actually, I'd much rather go through the journey and experience it and get there eventually than think that that's going to happen overnight. People, I think it happens overnight. So to answer your question about who influences me, actually, the biggest people are family, friends, the people that actually have your back through thick and thin and can actually sometimes come to the table with a completely objective view because they're not involved in it. They're not.
Yeah.
They haven't got the background. They haven't got the experience. I think people who don't know travel or go, well, "Why are you doing it like that?" They might just ask you a question that people in travel wouldn't. And I think coming to the world of travel from a completely non-travel background, I came to the world of travel like, why do people do it like that? Why is that so antiquated rather, in terms of the approach. Like, people who are outside your industry, who are not related to your business, are probably actually sometimes better placed to help you
Yeah,
find your way through it than those who are.
yeah, that's brilliant. Because I think you are. They're the people that ground you and make you actually suddenly stop and think yourself. Because we do. We all get carried away within our own industries, don't we? And we become, I've said it before, echo chambers of ourselves. And it's not always healthy. Sometimes it's
No,
good to all complain the same way, but then yeah, that grounding's very
I would
helpful.
love to. I would love to say that the name Out of Office was my idea, but it was out of a need to come up with a business name, buy a domain, and have it be catchy. And it was actually a girlfriend of mine from uni's boyfriend who came up with the name. When I basically was like looking down the barrel of like, I need to come up with a name for this business. And I was asking all my friends. I got loads. I got about 20 friends of mine at a birthday party of mine. I gave them all a piece of paper saying, "Come up with a name for my business." And it was
I
like
love it.
pink this, rainbow that. I was like, no, 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 no. And then it was that eureka moment where straight man came up with the name Out of Office with the double entendre of the word out, but also setting you out of office to
It's
go on holiday. It's like,
genius.
it. And I'd love to say I came up with the name for that. I didn't, but it was because I went to I didn't go to anyone business related. I went to a bunch of friends who had nothing to do with the business and said, "Help me." And that's how that name came about.
Brilliant. Oh, good. That's good because you can assume lots of things. That's good to hear. That's what it was.
Yeah,
Darren, mate, thank you so much. I've absolutely loved that. We've
been a
gone well over
pleasure.
the time, but what the heck? It's been so interesting. So,
Thanks,
look,
Steve.
thank you. We will keep an eye and let me know what's my commission if TripAdvisor come knocking.
Depends how much.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll watch this space.
Yeah,
Thanks, mate.
thanks, Steve.